Your Majesty, Laureate Robert P. Langlands, Minister, Mayor, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and friends of science. On behalf of the Norwegian Academy of Science and Letters, I have the pleasure and honor of welcoming you all to the Abel Prize Award ceremony for 2018. This year's prize winner, Professor Robert P. Langlands, receives the prize for his visionary program connecting representation theory to number theory. A little more than 50 years ago, Langlands wrote a 17-page letter to the great French mathematician André Weil. He wrote, "If you are willing to read it as a pure speculation, I would appreciate that. If not, I'm sure you have a wastebasket handy." This was indeed not pure speculation. His letter introduced a theory that created a completely new way of thinking about mathematics. It suggested deep links between two areas, number theory and representation theory, which had previously been considered as unrelated. Langlands' insights were so radical and so rich that the mechanisms he suggested to bridge these mathematical fields led to a project named the Langlands Program. The program has enlisted hundreds of the world's best mathematicians over the last 50 years. No other project in modern mathematics has as wide a scope, has produced so many deep results, and has so many people working on it. Its depth and breadth have grown, and the Langlands program is now frequently described as a grand unified theory of mathematics. Professor Rognes, head of the Abel Prize Committee, will tell you more about this. Robert P. Langlands was born in British Columbia in 1936. He graduated from the University of British Columbia with a Master of Science in 1958 and from Yale University with a PhD in 1960. He has held faculty positions at Princeton University and Yale University and is currently professor at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. In his very interesting little essay, The Usefulness of Useless Knowledge, Abraham Flexner, who founded the Institute of Advanced Study, makes a strong argument for curiosity as the driver of intellectual achievements. As the current director, Robert Dijkgraaf, has phrased it, Flexner had the conviction that human curiosity, with the help of serendipity, was the only force strong enough to break through the mental walls that block truly transformative ideas and technologies. I think this is very appropriate for today's laureate. His curiosity has given us deep new insight. On the web page of the Institute of Advanced Study, I found a page called On the Practice of Mathematics by Professor Langlands, referring to a series of lectures he first gave in 1999. He writes, "I shall give about 8 lectures on pure mathematics and number theory with the motto, 'Beautiful, lofty things.'" That's a wonderful motto, emphasizing the revelation of beauty, of deep insight. Professor Langlands' deep craving for knowledge is not restricted to mathematics. He has described his study of English literature in the following way. "I also verified, between classes, the meaning of every unfamiliar word in every poem assigned. Of course, no one else did, so that I was constantly alone in raising my hand. I cannot resist to mention that being a true intellectual, Professor Langlands is also a master of several languages. One of his early teachers declared that to be a mathematician, one had to learn French, German, and Russian. As for German and French, Langlands speaks and writes them both with considerable ease, to use his own words. And he continues, Russian I finally learned to read tolerably well. I also understand that Langlands speaks Turkish, and I guess he is soon fluent in Norwegian. The Norwegian Academy of Science and Letters is pleased and honored to have responsibility for awarding the Abel Prize. This task fits well with the main mission of the Academy, supporting the advancement of science and scholarship and strengthening the best research. We would like to thank the government of Norway for having entrusted the Academy with this task and providing the funding for it. The Academy has appointed an Abel board that also has the task of promoting interest in mathematics among children and young people by supporting projects in kindergartens, schools, and science centers. The initiatives include the Norwegian Mathematical Olympiad for upper secondary pupils and the Unge Abel contest for teams in Year 9. This year's young winners are here in the audience. You are important ambassadors for mathematics. Fostering an interest in mathematics in young people also requires good teachers. Nils Henrik Abel's teacher, Bernt Mikael Holmboe, was very important to Abel's career. To emphasize the important role of teachers, the Holmboe Memorial Prize is awarded annually to a teacher selected by the Norwegian Mathematical Council. This year's Holmboe Prize winner is Skage Hansen, a teacher at Engebråten Secondary School in Oslo. Today is the 16th time the Abel Prize is awarded. The Abel Prize Committee, with members nominated by the International Mathematical Union and the European Mathematical Society, deserves much of the honor for the recognition that the prize has attained internationally. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Abel Prize Committee, headed by Professor Jon Rognes, for their excellent work. The Norwegian Academy of Science and Letters would also like to thank the Norwegian mathematics community in general and everyone who promotes the importance of mathematics in society. Our knowledge society is dependent on outstanding research of the kind that the Abel Prize recognizes. The award ceremony is an excellent opportunity to draw attention to this. Last but not least, the Abel Board works tirelessly to showcase mathematics and the importance of mathematics. I would especially like to thank the chair of the Abel Board, Professor Christian Ranestad, for his dedication and hard work. After this ceremony, there is a reception at the Norske Teatret. You are all welcome. Distinguished guests, and most honored prize winner, Robert P. Langlands, this is a great day, not only for you, but for the field of mathematics, for all of us who are here today, and for society at large. Congratulations with the prize.
My father was trained as a carpenter, so he could open this door. He knew he could do, and we made frames for windows. Hey! And my wife and I grew up in the same town. And her father, he would buy things from my parents' store, and he ordered a window frame. For some reason, I made that frame, and the window never closed properly. So my father-in-law always cursed me as the person who sold him a window that never closed properly.
They're pretty heavy.
What it's called, not by me, I confess, the Langlands program is about various things, but among other things, it's about the solution of equations. Programming is very complicated, and it will be a very long time. What if the problems are so difficult that very few people want to touch them? It's not a subject that has moved quickly in the past, so I don't think it will move quickly in the present. I began to think about mathematics independently very early. I never asked for any advice for writing a thesis. The purpose is not to solve any problems. The purpose is to construct a theory. It's the test of a theory that now and again it solves a problem. A famous problem doesn't attract me at all. That kind of mathematics which I have influenced is mathematics for itself. Nobody cares about real poetry anymore, I would say. And mathematics is a little bit like that. Well, there are no disallowed roads in mathematics, right? There may be unpopular roads. Mathematics is a cultural thing, transmitted from generation to generation.
And this is a piece I'm working on.
He has his thing and I have my thing, and we get along very well.
And this is Bob.
I gave the money for these lectures. Well, don't you think it's a good thing? Every day you can look at the newspaper and you read people who are troubled. To propose a solution for the problems of the world, you certainly need some knowledge. These are things, seems to me, in which the knowledge of the details really counts. I began to write before I understood everything. In order to write it, I had to discover very many things, and I had to discover them after I began to write it. I was never satisfied with sheaves. I thought they weren't the correct object for the theory. I mean, this is about the geometric Langlands. I mean, if you like to use that word. What I think is being proposed cannot be the basis of a theory, that there's a more concrete, explicit theory available. And I tried in this paper to give only the very beginning, but I like to work on this paper every morning, so I have written articles in Turkish, in French, and in German. All right? I want to write one in Russian, so just to do it, just for the fun of it. No one in Russia, even who wants to write in Russian.
Your Majesty, Abel Laureate, ladies and gentlemen. Professor Robert Langlands has, in the words of an anonymous correspondent, created a King's Road to mathematics. The King's Roads of this country bring its regions closer together and help travelers find their way from one safe haven or scenic site to another. The landscape of mathematics is also populated with intriguing objects and dramatic motifs. And while some of its regions are tame and easily studied, others are wild and seemingly impenetrable. The times when a trailblazer first finds a negotiable path into formerly inaccessible terrain serve as watershed moments in the history of mathematics. And such is the nature of the Langlands program, which has inspired profound research in mathematics for half a century and which will surely continue to do so for decades to come. In the fields of algebraic number theory and arithmetic algebraic geometry, the objects of study are often given by equations and their solutions. By studying the entirety of solutions to a given problem, together with the symmetries that arise from how the problem is formulated, one is led to the notion of a Galois representation. We may think of these objects as residents of the land of mathematics. Each Galois representation has a kind of identifying mark or signature, which encodes the answers to many questions about that mathematical object. The foremost of these signatures is the Riemann-Zeta function, which is the subject matter of the Riemann hypothesis, arguably the principal unsolved problem in pure mathematics. It is therefore of great interest to map out the terrain populated by these subtle individuals, the Galois representations. One magnificent insight of Professor Langlands is that the same terrain is populated by another class of objects called automorphic representations, stemming from the fields of non-abelian harmonic analysis and infinite-dimensional representation theory. Each automorphic representation can also be identified by a signature, or L function, and a fundamental premise of the Langlands program is that the signature of any Galois representation is duplicated by the signature of some automorphic representation. Hence, the answers to questions about Galois representations are all to be found among the automorphic representations. In other words, by using the tools of analysis to map out the mountains and valleys, cities and roads of the landscape of automorphic forms, one is at the same time charting the terrain containing the objects and problems of algebra. The premises of the Langlands program have been affirmed in a number of deep and interesting cases with striking applications, but more remains to be done. To quote Euclid, there is no royal shortcut to geometry. In the same manner, the road to mathematics created by Robert Langlands is not an instant transportation device. You must still make the journey in order to see and experience the wonders along the way. But, fortunately, there is now a king's road to follow, where before there was only trackless terrain. So I'm very happy and honored to ask Professor Langlands to come forward to receive the Abel Prize for 2018. And I also have the honor to ask His Majesty King Harald to come forward to present the Abel Prize to Professor Langlands.
Your Majesty, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I don't need to read this, in fact, but let me at least have a look at it, recall what I wrote. So the telephone call informing me that I was to be awarded the Abel Prize arrived just as I was finishing up writing a paper that had taken me 6 or 7 years. So, now I have to get into the way of thinking of this particular letter. So it was the end of a 6 or 7 year struggle with particular problems, with problems of various kinds, and it was something that took me every day is a slight exaggeration, but not a very great exaggeration, for 5 hours or so, from 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning until noon. And I was getting very tired of it, and I was very glad to see it come to an end. And I actually, during it, at various times, I swore to myself that I would never undertake such an enterprise again. And indeed, I recognized that I was hardly young. I was indeed quite old, and that the time had perhaps come to think of other things. There are things that I had perhaps wanted to do in the course of a lifetime, not very ambitious things, but just things to amuse myself, to edify myself in some sense. So the study of history, various kinds, modern history, ancient history, history of the world, history of the universe, and things like this. So I decided that time was coming to an end for any kind of great exertion. And of course, the conclusion from that is that if the Abel Prize was awarded to me in the hope that I would continue my efforts, it was going to be disappointed. So I hope very much that it was just for what I'd already done, because I don't think much more is to come. I think I would like to reflect on other things, easier things, for what time is left. Now, I think that that's all I need to say, but there's something else that I should add. First of all, I would like to recall, not everyone is fully aware of it, I think, that much of the mathematics which I have been involved was made possible by Harishchandra, who's often neglected. So we could perhaps think today for a few minutes about Harishchandra, who was one of the people from whose papers, at least, I learned the most about mathematics. And we could also think, just to amuse ourselves perhaps, that there were a number of other influences on my mathematics and on contemporary mathematics that on this particular occasion we might want to remember. The first is Sophus Lee, indirectly, through Harishchandra and through other people. The representation theory is an essential element of anything I have proposed, and representation theory is a representation theory of continuous groups, and they are generally referred to Sophus Lee as the originator. And of course, there's another Norwegian on the list of people who have strongly influenced the domain, and that is, my goodness, now and again names just slip me, and this is someone I've known for 50 years, and it's a recent, Charlotte, tell me, Selberg, of course. Okay. One shouldn't forget the name of Selberg, and another Norwegian who strongly influenced the domain in which I have spent the most of my time. And there's only one last thing. Everyone is, of course, aware of the influence of Abel is on mathematics, but one should also be explicitly aware that he had an influence, in particular, on the domain that we're discussing today. And as a reference to it, a very gentle reference to it, but very enlightening reference. I read it only recently, and it was enlightening for me, and that is the introduction to the section of Felix Klein's History of Mathematics in the 19th Century, in which he, in particular, discusses some of the first ideas of Abel on the integration of elliptic integrals. And that's all I wanted to say today. I hope it was enough. Thank you very much.